Hey everybody, welcome back to Random Sidecast. It's been a hot second, but I am super excited to get this thing going. A lot of things that are very exciting coming up in the Horizon universe, and I want to talk about it. And we have an incredible guest today. Really pumped to have them on the show. They make a ton of great content, not only for video games, but for also other media as well. Particularly want to highlight for this community two really thoughtful pieces and incredibly well-made videos about Horizon, the unexpected success of Horizon Zero Dawn, which is darn near close to 1 million views at this point. So make sure you watch it. We got to get that over the hump. And the overlooked success of Horizon Forbidden West. James from LazerzZ. Thanks so much for coming on, man.
No, I'm happy to be here. It's so good. I'm glad you invited me on. It was we had you on as always last year. Start of last year. It was about a year ago now. Just
Yeah, I know,
before
right? I mean, it
Forbidden
was
West.
before Forbidden West came out.
Yeah.
So, I
And
mean,
end of last year, I remember me and Tyler were reflecting on the shows, and we were talking about looking at all the episodes we've done, and we both agreed the episode we did with you was probably our favorite one that year, to be honest. It was just a
well,
great
thank you.
time. We had some good chats, and it was nice to sit down and talk about a video game and just be like really into it and just have that conversation. So I'm happy to be here. It's good to be back. I'm looking forward to this.
Yeah, man. It's well, first of all, since the last time we spoke was before Forbidden West, you've had a chance to play it. Obviously, big fan of the franchise in general. What did you think about it as a successor to the very loved Zero Dawn?
Yeah, I thought it was the best successor it probably could have been. I felt that they managed to take everything that worked, push it further. Anything that didn't work, it felt like they refined it. It felt like that, like Zero Dawn, and I love Zero Dawn, was like their first go at it, and this one was sort of like we're gonna get it right this time. Even though, I love playing about Zero Dawn. I feel like this was the game that was like we're gonna refine every aspect. We're gonna try and make this the sequel that it needs to be. But without going too far, like they didn't just go, we're going to do absolutely everything possible. Like they're saving stuff. There's ways they can continue to improve. There's ways they can continue to take the story in different directions. Yeah, overall, loved it. I thought it was a brilliant game. It was my game of the year last year. Thought it was, just stand out. Terrific.
Yeah, it was one of those things where I remember playing it for the first time, and when we talked about when we spoke originally, I think the trailer had come out. And I knew they were going to take a big swing, like right off the bat, because they had Tilda in the trailer, and I wasn't quite sure. I had like two working theories, but either way, it was a pretty big departure, in my opinion. It really went swinging hard into the sci-fi realm of things, even though Horizon is a sci-fi game. What do you think about them doubling down on that in the sequel, or what would you like to see? Or rather, here's a better question. What got you really invested in Horizon in the first place? And what do you think would be the best kind of note that Horizon could hit, that it's a strong suit that could carry over into a third game?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think with Zero Dawn, I think what reeled me in so much, I don't watch a lot of marketing for Zero Dawn, so I don't really know like a great deal of what to expect. All I know is there was like, you got robot dinosaurs, you've got, it's this open world, it's like, there's your tribal people and stuff, like how are they going to play with that, how they're going to take it somewhere, good. But I just heard really good things from, friends and stuff. And I decided, I'll give it a go. Let's see what this is about. And it was that exploration of like, oh, there's so much, like it's way deeper than I thought that it was going to be. You get in, you're like, oh, there's these AIs, and you've got, there's this secret story, and like, oh, who is Aloy? Like, what's this? What even happened to the old world? Like, all of these different things that just like reeled me in, and I was like, oh, this is way more interesting than I thought it was going to be. So all of those aspects was really cool, and I think that on top of that, you've obviously got this new world. Like, it's not a post-apocalyptic world in the traditional sense. It's like post-apocalyptic, and I think like that aspect of like, arriving on Meridian for the first time, like, seeing the politics there and stuff was like so interesting. And it was like, oh, there's these two worlds that are like juxtaposed but layered on top and beneath the other. And it's like, that was so interesting. And that is what really reeled me in with Zero Dawn and that whole storyline and Aloy's personal journey. And then it was like, okay, well, where can we take this lore and world building? Like, where do we go next? And I am a big fan of when games do lean heavily into their more weird aspects to them. Because like Horizon could have gone, well, the bit that everyone, knows, or like they're playing for, or like the thing that got on there, I guess, in the first place is, you got your bow and arrow, you're fighting these big robots, and you got these tribes and all these things. But I always like when the games go, let's lean into the niche bit a little bit more. Like I was a big fan of Assassin's Creed back in the day, and I always loved when they'd go into the sci-fi elements. And you got the ones who came before, and all of this modern day stuff. That was always my favorite part. So with Horizon, when they go lean into that more, it's like we get to meet all these different AI in Forbidden West. Like you go and you're collecting all these different AI, and like you get to have all these conversations with Gaia. You've got like all of your friends around you are learning more about the old world, and they will get their focuses, and it's like, okay, this is cool. Like we've got a team, and we're delving more into this aspect. So I think what you would probably want to do in a third game, or like where you would want to take it, is marry those two in the most perfect way. Which the other games are balanced well, but like, how do you then take this world that Aloy and her friends are learning about and know about, and how do you then have them explore the world that is still so primitive? How do you take those two, and how do you make them work when now we know we know more about the old world almost than we know about the current Horizon world, that we don't really know what's outside of these borders that we've already explored. So I guess it would be a matter of like, yeah, I guess exploring that. I'm not sure what way, but I think that would be an interesting way to take it, and just like really being able to marry those elements, because I think that's what always made Horizon so interesting, was those two parts coming together and being quite balanced, balanced quite well.
In order to make the two videos that really, and by the way, really well made, really, really awesome. And they're both like the hour and a half video that I made nearly killed
Mm-hmm.
me. And you've done it twice now with Horizon.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
just like kudos to you. But I remember you talking about in the first video about Zero Dawn, that was like your third time playing through the game.
Mm-hmm.
So what were the kind of touchstone points that kept drawing you back from each experience? Because you did say they were different.
Um, yeah, yeah. It was, I think, uh, like I said, the first time playing through Zero Dawn was the mystery of it all, and like what's gonna happen next, what's this even about, figuring it out. Um, I think the second time, I honestly I don't remember the second time I played the game. I think maybe it was just like a quick run through, maybe it was like for gameplay reasons. I don't really remember it, but it was
I have one of
like,
those too.
yeah, exactly. But I think the third time it was almost rediscovering it, like rediscovering why did I love this game, why did I fall in love with it, and like re-experiencing it, but from the perspective that like I know the outcome, I know where it ends, but like getting to that point, what are the things that you wouldn't notice the first time that you notice on another run through, where you're like, oh, that's interesting, and they do this here, and that links to that, and like the stuff that sets up a sequel. Um, was Yeah, that was really interesting, and it just like drew me back in to just go through it again. And I'm sure in the future I'll play Zero Dawn again. I'm sure it'll be a game I don't put to rest, and same with Forbidden West. Because it's just a universe that I've really latched onto.
Well, speaking of an expanding universe, really, because one of the reasons why I wanted to do some more podcasts right now is there's a few things coming up for Horizon that's pretty interesting. The first one in February, as you know, Call of the Mountain is coming out.
Mm-hmm.
So Horizon's first foray into VR, kind of like the flagship title for the PSVR 2. And the thing that I'm most interested in is the first Horizon story that doesn't solely revolve around Aloy. Apparently, we're going to get to see her, but what kind of opportunities kind of excite you about, and also what kind of makes you nervous about kind of departing from that really iconic character that she's become now,
Mm.
and kind of going on this new journey for somebody who doesn't know that much about the ancient world and kind of has that part of the story taken out of it because Aloy is so unique in that way.
Mm. Yeah, it's a good point. It'd be an interesting way, like an interesting thing to tackle, because it's sort of like yeah, how do you do a Horizon game that's not a Horizon game almost? Like
Yeah.
it's gonna focus on different things. And obviously like it's a smaller project being a VR game, and that's interesting and that's cool. And maybe I'll play it at some point. I don't have VR, but
Yeah.
maybe I'll check it out. I do want VR. It'd be cool to experience it at some point. But yeah, that is an interesting point. Like, how do you do Horizon without Horizon? Because I mean, we've had a lot of little bits of news that they are expanding out quite a bit. Um, so I guess that's something they're really interested in doing.
Yeah.
By not having Aloy, not going down this route of necessarily being the same story of like someone that's born in this world that has to learn about the old ones and figure that out. It's like doing something different. But I think there's a lot of room for that. I think there's room because there's so much interesting lore. I mean, that's the interesting about Horizon. Like I said it in my Forbidden West video, I think something that people don't really appreciate as much is that with any other game, you have to world build, but with Horizon, you have to world build twice.
Yeah.
because you're building the old world and then you're building the new one on top of that. And like, how does like not just two separate ones, but they have to feed into each other. Like,
Yeah.
how does like where does their religions come from, their beliefs, their history, their different factions, the buildings they inhabit, things like that. Um, and there's plenty of that to explore with stuff that doesn't focus on a character like Aloy, people that maybe do just live in this world that exists now, like getting to explore stories like that. I think is a really interesting opportunity. I'm looking forward to seeing how they do more of that moving forwards.
Yeah, it's because then there's also talks about a Horizon multiplayer game
Mm.
too that I was going to say on the
Yeah.
Horizon, but I'm going to try. I have to try every time to not do that.
No, I think you should. No, you should do it every time. Actually,
Be
that
like
would be
on the
perfect.
Horizon. It's on the Horizon.
Oh, that's brilliant. Actually, yeah.
But yeah, it's and there's been I don't want to get for people who don't want to get into leaks, but there has been a leak that essentially kind
Mhm.
of confirms what we know already. And I'm not sure about you. Did you ever play Monster Hunter?
I play a little bit of it. Yeah, not a
Yeah,
lot. Not a lot.
and I would because there's kind of two schools of thought here as far as kind of what people would want out of a Horizon multiplayer game where maybe it's more like an MMO where, it's really wide sweeping in that way. Maybe more of a Monster Hunter vibe, which is like friends get together, beat up big machines, and then go home. Or I don't know, maybe marrying the two in kind of a Destiny kind of way. What would your Horizon
Mm.
multiplayer kind of ideal scenario look like?
Yeah, that's interesting. I guess you would maybe I'd have it centered around like the Hunter's Lodge or something. And
Mm,
then from that you can then split off and do more interesting things with like, future expansions and stuff like that they do
yeah.
with like MMOs. Like you could start off and it's like, it's just you and friends like, you're hunting things, but then maybe you stumble across stuff and it opens up a larger story and then like, each expansion they decide to do for their, multiplayer game, expands on the story. Because I think you've got to have story be central, even if it
Yeah.
is a multiplayer focused game. I feel like story's got to be integral. Otherwise, like who is it for? At the end of the day, like either you're bringing in people that just love multiplayer gameplay games so that they can
Hmm.
play this one game and not get invested in your Horizon ecosystem, or you're making it for people that already love Horizon and people that haven't played it before that you might suck into that like ecosystem that you're building. So I think that's important is to do story, but I think you'd need to do something with co-op, and I think that could like you'd be able to evolve the base gameplay because you'd be able to have like different play styles. Like you're not just going to have everyone plays the same that Aloy plays.
Right.
Um,
And
to
they
sort
kind
of
of played
like
around
yeah.
with that in the Horizon board game a little bit, which I thought was interesting. I got to play test that a little bit and
Hmm.
kind of like a Kardra attributes or Banuk attributes. I can't help but also think of like Ghost of Tsushima Legends, where you
Oh
kind of
yeah,
like
yeah.
yeah, you like break down the main character into different kind of classes. Cause I gotta tell you, like I love Horizon, but Ghost is one of my all-time favorite games. It was just
Hmm.
so good. And the way they dropped that multiplayer just out of the blue for free, I was just like,
Oh yeah,
okay, this is great. I'm gonna play like the
yeah.
tar out of
It's
this.
fantastic. Yeah, it's good. Yeah.
So I was hoping that they would do something like that for Horizon, but it sounds like they're just gonna go full bore into this thing and hopefully maybe explore some areas or people that we haven't really got a chance to in the past. As far as civilizations that we haven't got to explore that much, because it seems like we got a lot of Karja, we got a decent amount of Nora. The Frozen Wilds gave us a ton of Banuk stuff, and then what would you think of kind of a really heavily storyline for the Osram? Because I really don't think that they've done too much of that up to this point.
Yeah, true. And they're an interesting like people. I think there'd be some interesting bits and bobs you can do there with them because like yeah, like you said, like the games are very heavily, at least the main game obviously was very heavily Nora and Karja, and then obviously you get the DLC with the Banuk. So, um, Oseram would be nice to explore, especially because like we have characters that we know quite well that are awesome. So it would be interesting to see more about what they do. And there's very interesting little bits of lore and stuff that you pick up about them throughout
Yeah.
both Horizon games. That I think that would be an interesting place to explore and see what they're about because I feel like they're a bit underappreciated.
Yeah, no, I'm totally with you. I mean, Aaron is like everybody's favorite. Everybody loves Aaron, and John Hopkins did such a good job. And yeah,
Yeah,
I
for
think it
sure.
was part of the original plan that they were gonna do some stuff up there, but then left on the cutting room floor just because the game was super
Yeah, yeah.
ambitious as it was already. Um, so moving forward after Call of the Mountain, we have Burning Shores, which I'm super excited about. Still kind of, I get the reason why it's a PS5 exclusive, because I think it would kill most people's PS4s, because we're going to get a chance to fight a Metal Devil, which I
Mm.
think has been like in the back of everybody's mind since first playing the first game. Um, Being that they are really just letting the game go as far as hopefully pushing it to the next level with the PS5. What is your biggest hope for the DLC now that it's not going to be kind of needing to be PS4 compatible?
Yeah, I think it'll be interesting to see what that allows for the game because I mean, Forbidden West pushed like the technology really far. Like that was very very impressive that even was a game that released on the PS4. Like it's one of the best games I think I've ever seen. Like visually, fidelity, like the density of it was
Mm,
insane.
yeah.
Um, and so yeah, I guess it'll be. I don't think I have any hopes necessarily, but I am very interested to see where they go with that. I mean, do you have any hopes? What are your hopes?
Oh man, that's right. That's smart though, because if you don't have hopes, they can't get crushed.
Exactly. I mean, that's what I've learned over the years. The more times I have hopes, the more they get crushed. So I don't anymore. I just take things that they give me,
It's a
and then we
smart way to
see.
live. You're just it's
Exactly.
always, under promised, and it's like, oh, always over delivered.
Yeah.
Oh
Exactly.
man, that's an interesting thing. I hope for more Quen stuff, honestly, because
Mm,
they really got me super invested. I thought the CEO was a great, terrible, awful, great character, and
yeah.
I'd
Definitely.
love to find out more about him. But just in general, I think going to LA is going to be really fun, because one of my biggest hopes for Forbidden West was that we would get to go to Vegas, and we did, and that
Hmm.
was by far and away my favorite part of the game, was swimming through there and doing that whole thing. So I would love a little bit more in depth about the Quen, and obviously I have no idea how we're going to do that fight for the Metal Devil. You might have to do some Shadow of the Colossus type mechanics, or like
Yeah, like or
old
like a
school God
God
of
of
War.
War. Yeah, exactly. Like climbing around it, sort of thing. A little bit of like fighting here and there to eventually like take down the whole thing. Yeah, because I can't imagine we're gonna like fight it like on the ground, just shooting arrows up at this giant motherfucker. Um, yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. And yeah, like you said, the Quen that would be very interesting because they were very interesting in Forbidden West, and we didn't get to see a whole lot of them. He was very focused on the Tanakh, and I thought, as much as interesting as they were, the Quen really sort of like grabbed my interest. I think it was very much like, that's interesting. Like talk about like their empire and stuff. I'm like, what are they doing back there? I want to see a bit of that. That sounds pretty good. So yeah, it'd be nice to see some more about them. I don't know if we'll get to see them. If it'll be like a huge amount of them, maybe,
Mm-hmm.
but at least give me a bit. I'd like a little bit of that. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And I think one thing that I really enjoy about your content, so much of it is really story driven, right? And I think a lot of content creators, obviously the game has to be fun. Like first and foremost, doesn't
Mm-hmm.
matter how great of a story you have, but the story is really, really important. Netflix apparently has been linked with a Horizon series, and that makes
Yeah.
me incredibly excited and incredibly nervous all at the
Mm.
same time, because it seems like recently with things like The Witcher and The Last of Us, they've shown an ability to get it right. Because I also see you doing reviews on things like Obi-Wan, and taking things that we love and putting it in a different framework, for better or worse. What do you think would need to happen, or even what like the best medium as far as a Horizon series would go on Netflix? Like, from a story perspective, how do you not mess it up? Is really my
Yeah.
question,
That
because
is a
I'm so
it,
nervous.
yeah, no, I feel that. It's how do you get Horizon right when adapting it, or not adapting it but translating it and
Yeah,
doing a story set? I think the same applies for most video games. I think don't try to adapt the story of the thing. Although most try to do that because it's like the best way to sell the thing.
yeah.
Um, but to me, and like as good as some of the stuff can be, like you look at The Last of Us, yeah, they're doing a pretty good job. I don't think it's like a masterpiece or anything, but they're doing a pretty good job. Like I'm enjoying myself. But I still think that show could be better were it focused not on Joel and Ellie, not on retelling the story, just on like a story in the Last of Us universe, because it gives the like director, the writers like free reign to just go crazy and do something cool that they want to, like a story they want to tell. Um, so like with Horizon, and I think there's like with Horizon more so than Last of Us, there's so much room to go what story do we tell here? We could tell any story. Let's tell a story. And that
Mhm.
would be what I would do. I'm pretty sure that's not what they're doing, right? If they like, I'm pretty sure, like, based on rumors, they're just going to do the game, right? Or something like that.
Yeah, I'm honestly really confused. I think it's probably a working title because I think what I read was it's called Horizon like 2077, which is a
Oh, I did
which
see
is
that. Yeah, yeah,
yeah, which is a weird date to pick because at that point, lore-wise, like everyone's just dead. Um,
yeah.
not a
Yeah,
whole lot
yeah,
going on there. I have like one thought about it. It might be like people in Elysium like retelling their story, so you could do like half Aloy, half Enduring Victory.
yeah.
But
True.
yeah, it's honestly, and the thing that honestly, just from a logistical standpoint, is how do you make Horizon? I mean, you'd have to throw so much money at it to get
Yeah.
because let's take Game of Thrones for example. For at least the first, I know the last season very divisive, but not every episode had a dragon in it, and so much of
Mm,
the budget for those episodes are like we got to make this look great, and they did. But Horizon, you're going to have some expensive CGI
yeah.
all over the place if it's live action. So I almost think maybe doing it in the way of like a what is it like Arcane, like the League of Legends. So
Mm,
almost maybe like a really high level, well done animated series would almost do better, in my opinion. I know
yeah.
a lot of people don't watch things because they're animated,
Hmm.
but I don't know. It's just logistically, sounds like you're. I mean, it's Netflix, so they have the money, but it's going to be
Yeah.
super expensive.
Yeah, that's interesting. That's definitely a good point because like if you are, you're gonna need Horizon is a world that like how do you do that without copious amounts of CGI? You need so much because you gotta make this world realize you got so much going on, whether it even is like the old world stuff, the machines you're fighting, even just like, somewhere like Meridian, like you've you're gonna need a lot of CGI for that. So yeah, I mean, I'd be down if they wanted to do some sort of animated show. Do some kind of thing in that style. But again, I think like for me, I mean, I don't know, I'm very hard to please. So I think it's gonna if they want to go down the route of retelling Horizon Zero Dawn, I think you're. I don't know if you're gonna. I don't know. I don't know if they could ever do that right in a way that would like impress me. I feel like I don't know. You've got to tell a different story, but also like I've seen people speculate. Well, what if the show is about what happened to like the downfall of everyone and like Operation Enduring Victory and the Zero Dawn project and the origin of that. And
Mm-hmm.
while that's an interesting idea, I like that we don't know everything. Like we know enough, but we haven't seen it play out. Like we
Right.
know bits and pieces and we can piece together pretty much everything. But we've not seen it before us. Like it's something that is foreign and does exist so long in the past that it's like there's still this thing that like, yeah, the whole thing, but like it's still so far out of reach almost. And I feel like showing us it would ruin it. I don't know if you feel the same way about that.
Now, you bring up a really good point because I do feel, especially when you're dealing with things that are truly like terrible and horrifying, almost leaving it up to the imagination is far more powerful. So I didn't even think about that. That's
Mm-hmm.
a really good point. It's that I think the worst moment in like a movie like Jaws is when you finally see the shark. And you're like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, okay, it's just this,
Yeah,
and
yeah, yeah.
creaking around. And before then, it's
Yeah.
really impactful. So yeah, that was the thing, like especially with Ted Farrow, where people are like we want to see it. It's like you don't want to see it. You,
No,
you
no, no,
think
no.
you want to see it,
You
you
do not
don't
want
want
to
to
see
see
it.
it.
No, it would be worse. It would be much worse. It's better that we don't. Like that's what made that moment work. And like, I mean, I said in my video there were other ways maybe I would have taken that, but
Me too.
I'm still glad they showed restraint in that moment. I'm still glad
Yes.
they weren't like, oh, let's have a boss fight against big monster Ted Farrow or something like that. Like a lot of
Yeah.
people were like, no, that'd be so cool. I'm like, no, no, it wouldn't be so cool.
No.
No, I don't want
Ugh.
that at all.
I'd be jumping the
Um,
shark. I'd be like, I'm on board for most of this. That would have been too much. It was in my head canon. I always pictured like Ted Farrow basically living out the rest of his life alone in the
mhm.
bunker, almost as a commentary. And like, doesn't matter how rich and wealthy you are if there isn't a society of people to appreciate it or care. So, like
Yeah,
at the end of the
yeah.
world, you still can't buy friends, kind of deal, and just kind of slipping slowly into madness. So that was a.
Mhm.
I did not expect the life longevity thing to be such a theme in the second game
Yeah.
because it was so, I mean, to their credit, they did mention it in the first game in some very obscure lore. So it wasn't like this is coming out of nowhere, but you really had to study.
Hmm.
But I was surprised that so much of it was centered around like the Zeniths, who were the same people who had left Earth, and Ted Farrow was trying to do the same thing, but obviously didn't really have the resources to do it. So I am, and also it came around. What did you think of the reveal of Beta? Because I really thought a second clone got super close to jumping the shark,
Hmm.
and it kind of, I've bought in now, but I got to tell you that I love Horizon. I'm a Horizon. However, that one threw me.
Really? Okay. I thought it
Yeah.
was. I think I was pretty on board for most of it. Like as it was coming along, I was like, I'm just kind of glad they're kind of just going ball like all in with this, like balls to the
Mhm.
wall, fucking
Yeah.
mental with all that shit. And I think in the end they earned it. I like what they did with Beta quite a bit, and I think it really worked. And I think it also works as a way because I think Forbidden West for me, it's less about what's happening directly in front of you. It's more about what's happening behind the scenes in terms of its character journey. Like Forbidden West is way more about character than it is about its actual like plot and story. I feel
Yeah, I
because
would
like the
agree.
Zeniths, are they that compelling? Like not really. I guess like they're just kind of like whatever the most sort of they're sort of generic villains, but like what they facilitate is this introspection from Aloy and like the way she considers herself compared to Elizabeth and that journey she goes on of like self like realization, and Beta plays into that quite heavily. So I think it was crazy, but I think they managed to earn it narratively, and I think that's why it just everything came together for me at the end and just sort of worked together to justify why they went the way they did. So I think it, yeah, ultimately works out.
No, I agree. Yeah, they definitely, because to give her any kind of family and kind of like, I don't know, blood sense, that I think that
Mm,
was the really literally the only way you could do it. So I agree. They really they stuck the landing. The trick was freaking me out in the middle of it, but yeah, they stuck the landing
yeah.
in the end there. And ultimately, like you said, and this is one of my big gripes too about people who say, well, Aloy is unlikable. Well, it's
Hmm.
like, if you are, I think one of the best things about Aloy is the fact that she is very flawed. Like, she's a person trying her best despite, overwhelming circumstance. And you're right. I think at the core of the story, I think for Zero Dawn, what really made it special was, despite all of the mystery and the global, thing, it's really just a girl trying to find herself and where she comes from, like
Yeah,
that
definitely.
classic hero's journey. And then you're right, in
Hmm.
Forbidden West, I think that was their biggest strength, to see that full arc kind of happen between, I have to do this by myself, I'm going to push people away because I'm trying to protect them, to then kind of coming to that, through Varl's sacrifice, and which that was gutting. uh
Mm.
Finally kind of sticking that landing of like, I, I shouldn't do this alone. People want to help me, and finally being able to do what Elizabeth couldn't, which
Mm.
is actually let people in that she cared so much about.
Yeah, exactly. I think they do that so well. I think that like part of what makes Aloy likable in the end is that she's a bit unlikable at times.
Yeah.
Like she is a dick to a lot of people all the time, and I think people just I don't know, a lot of people write that off and they're like,
Mm-hmm.
"Oh no, I hate her. She sucks." I'm like, "Well, but that's what makes it interesting. Like she's not nice to everyone, but like the thing about her that's so special is that she can be though,
Mm-hmm.
and she's trying so hard almost to be someone she's not because she thinks that's what's best for the world and best for her and it's what she needs to do. And Forbidden West is this journey of realizing no, that's not the case. Like your friends are what matter, your family's what matter, like the people that live are what matter, not this vague idea of continuing humanity. The important part is continuing the humanity you can observe in the world. And like she comes to learn that, and it's like, okay, that's the key to doing what Elizabeth couldn't do and actually being better than Elizabeth and managing to succeed, which is a thing that keeps coming up in the game as well. Like, you've got Silence and Tilda that both bring up her being better than Elizabeth in a lot of ways. And so it's like this journey, and I just think that it just, yeah, no, I love it. I love it. Even thinking about it now, I'm like, man, I want to play it again. I fucking love this game. And it's not often games like stories could, like, I always have issues with things. Like I have such high standards, it's fucking stupid. But it's Forbidden West just did something for me where everything just resonated. It just worked so well. And Aloy's character is, I mean, she's one of my favorite characters in video games, I think, at this point. I love her so much. I think she's great.
Yeah, but yeah, it's full character growth. It's good storytelling, right?
Yeah,
Where
exactly. Yeah, yeah.
you start someplace and then you end. So I think one of the like for God of War, for instance, one of the reasons
Hmm.
why you end up relating with Atreus so much is that there's a point in that story where he's just a little punk and
Yeah.
you want to kick him off a cliff.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. It's frustrating. You're like, this fucking guy, like, cut it out, man. And then like it all comes together though, and it all makes sense. And it's that journey that that just that journey of characters. You want like people and characters should be flawed. Like it's
Yeah.
just the way that people are. And if someone is perfect from start to finish and they're always just charismatic and hilarious and always getting things right, they're not interesting.
Yeah.
But when you start to throw in flaws and maybe they're not very nice to some people, or some things don't land properly or they mess up, then you start to see these characters, you relate to them, you go on this journey, and it just takes you across this storyline that just gets you deeply invested. And I think Horizon is one that's really good at that. Obviously God of War is a great one.
Hmm.
um and the best stories, the ones that stand the test of time, are those ones where you can relate to that character journey very strongly, or maybe not even relate to a character journey, but you're with it, you're on that character journey too. um and I think that's something, yeah, deeply important.
Kind of going back to a point that I don't want to brush over because I wholeheartedly agree as far as taking a really well established universe and telling a side story that's very compelling, like Rogue One, for instance. I think is a really great example of, and at
Mm-hmm.
least in my opinion, that done really well. You're like, I'm going to take one line of obscure dialogue and really pan it out into this really awesome movie that's not beholden to anything.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a character or story that you would like explored further that maybe we hadn't, through the main story with Aloy, that you think would make a really good story?
Hmm. I don't know.
I
No,
have one.
I can't. Yeah, go on. What's yours?
So this is my pitch for Gorilla to make a either a DLC or some project about Rost. That's
Okay.
because so many people, that story of him literally just avenging his family as a Death Seeker is it's too awesome and
Mm-hmm.
great to not explore further. Like in I think most realistically, because they've done comics in the past, I'd love to see a comic about that arc, but we he's such a compelling character that you really don't get that much of. I mean,
Mm.
he's only in a very brief part of the first game. Obviously, his impact is felt throughout the whole series, but you only really interact with him in the beginning of the first game.
Yeah, that's a good point. I am quite adverse to prequels. They scare
Okay,
me, because I don't know. I guess people would say I'm pretentious, but I like to think that less is always more. So it's like, honestly, I feel like the fact we don't know what happened to Rost is what makes him compelling.
it's
Maybe
fair.
if they tell that story, will they be able to tell it to a standard where it's better than not knowing? I don't know.
Mm,
Um, but it's definitely something that could be explored. Like, I don't think it's a bad idea by any means. I think it's definitely something you definitely could do, and you could take that in an interesting direction. But I think what would be interesting if you were to do a game like that, I think would be pretty cool to do it different, like a different genre of game. Like,
mm,
maybe don't have it be the exact same gameplay formula, open world structure as Zero Dawn, Forbidden West. Maybe do like a linear, maybe more like an Uncharted or something,
mm-hmm.
in terms of like, this linear exploration of this very focused personal narrative. Could be interesting, because I think a lot of franchises fall into this trap of like, we've got to make every game the same, like Assassin's Creed. You look at like a Halo, the games that are just like, no, we can't go into like deeply different genres. Like, I mean, Halo has with like Halo Wars, but I think there's so much room there to be like, what if you do this type of genre or this genre game, and like really just like hone in on the specialties of that genre to tell a particular story. Not saying that like an Uncharted S game would be the best one to tell that story in, but I think it would be interesting to explore like Horizon, but let's go in a totally different direction with how a game plays, because there's a worry that things become tedious and like repetitive and monotonous if you're just doing every Horizon game is open world
Yeah.
action RPG sort of thing. So I think that could be a cool way of doing it. So in a different sort of, yeah, genre.
No, I think that's a really good point that actually got me thinking too. Because in that story, honestly, it's very little machine focused. It's him going
Mm,
after people.
yeah.
So, for better or worse, the human to human combat Horizon is probably its weakest
Hmm.
point.
Yeah,
And
definitely. It's got to be. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, to be real. But that's the thing. You're here for the robot dinosaurs. So I get that, it's like, yeah, there's a human faction here, but this is why you're really here. But
Yeah, for
that
sure.
could give a new depth to a human to human combat system in a way like a kind of a more standard RPG would go. No, I like that idea a
Mm.
lot. Yeah, it's just I don't know. Selfishly, I always want to know more.
Yeah. No, I get it. I get it. Most people do. And that's the thing. I do too, but I also think to myself and I'm like, but do I really want to know more? Like I do, but I don't know. I have no faith in anyone. I think they're gonna get it. They get it wrong. I just I'm like I want to know more, but every single time I've wanted to know more, the thing has come out and it's bad, and so I'm
Well,
just sad.
I can't knock you for that opinion either, which is unfortunate because with so many things, by the time it goes through like five producers and one writer didn't like it, so they sign off and a new writer
Hmm.
comes on and you really do got to cherish those stories that are just clean and concise and
Yeah.
you're not rehashing anything because I would really hope that I don't know I have hopes for things like I think what is it, Warhammer or whatever is might have kind of a similar thing going on, but you have somebody like Henry Cavill who is just a massive nerd and probably wouldn't let it suck.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
You need somebody within the IP who's got a lot of sway to be like, no, 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 we're not going to just like make an arbitrary change because we think it's going to hit really well with a certain demographic. There's a reason why people resonated with the story in general, and we can't really just let analytics determine where we want our story to go.
Yeah, for sure. It's a difficult one, and I think for me, I'm just like a lot of series of like whether it's films, TV, games, whatever. I'm just like kind of like when they're over, I'm like, thank God it was good and like it's done. Like a lot of things, like I don't know, Batman Arkham is complete and like it wasn't perfect. There were some issues in there, but overall, it's remembered fondly, and it's like
Mhm.
I like that. And like the same with Uncharted, like Neil Druckmann's come out recently and said, like, well, I mean, it's not that Uncharted will never be made again, but it won't be made by Naughty Dog. And so it's like, well, if they never make another Uncharted, it will always be one of the greatest video game series. And
Mhm.
that's great. And that's good. And I like things to be finite. And I get scared when companies decide they want to expand and like it's like, well, how long is this going to last? 10 years, 20 years? Like, are we going to
Yeah.
keep going with these things? And I think you can do that when it's like an anthology thing, like you look at Final Fantasy, like every game is a different story, so like you can
Right.
do that forever if you want because you're telling individual finite stories. But when you look at something like Horizon, I'm like, if we keep going for like forever, like is this going to become another Ubisoft IP? Is it going to be an Assassin's Creed? Like I don't want that for it. I would like
Yeah.
it to have a conclusion and then like you know, I'd like to be left wanting more. That's what I always want from things. Like,
Yeah.
I'd rather be left wanting more than know everything and everything I know is bad. So, it's, I don't think most people probably feel like that. I feel like most people probably don't care that much. I don't know. But
No,
I,
but once again, I think that's a really valid viewpoint, and I think so much. Yeah, I think restraint is a big thing because
yeah.
once yeah, could you make more stories about Aloy? Yeah, but I think a trilogy series that really completes her story arc is the exact thing that you want. Maybe spin things off in different directions, from the universe. But no, I totally get it. Where you're like, that was a fully encapsulated story. I want more, but this was the reason why I want it is because it was so good. I think like one of the
Mm-hmm.
best examples just in media that I've seen recently, relatively recently, was Queen's Gambit or any of those like
Mm.
limited release series where you had a story,
Mm-hmm.
you executed it really well, and then just walk away. It's great that it
Yeah.
was a big hit. You don't need to make a cinematic universe out of it.
Yeah. Exactly. And I think more things should do that because it's like those are my favorite things. I feel like I'm just so sick of these big franchises and like I'm so sick of them. Like I don't know. I don't watch the MCU anymore.
Mm-hmm.
I don't watch Star Wars anymore. Um, I'm just like so many things that I used to like. I just don't like anymore because it's like they just I just burned me out, and it was like something that could have been this one and done, or you could have done a trilogy and then wrapped it up, just perpetuate themselves forever. And it's like, I need this to end. I can't do this anymore. And I guess I get a bit scared when I see franchises that I like decide to do spin-offs and stuff. So I look at Horizon and I'm like, I love Horizon, but we're getting, TV show, MMO, like maybe other spin-offs in the future. They're doing a VR game, which is, fine, but like, where does this take us? Where are we going to be in 5 years, 10 years? What is this franchise going to look like? It's I don't know. It's a little bit. I'm just a bit anxious about it, but
But
I don't know.
James, money though, money, James.
True. That's a really, really good point. You're right, actually. Yeah, that's a good point. Money, we do love it.
You're right. Just like I don't know, because you kind of talked about your preference there. I think we're kind of aligned in what we enjoy for your money, as far as like pinnacle storytelling is concerned. It doesn't have to be video games; it could be any media that you want.
Mhm.
What is like your benchmark for this is exactly what I want out of a show, franchise, film, whatever?
Ooh.
Opposed to maybe what is your lowest tier? Like what were you so excited about that tripped over the bar so hard that it just
Oh, good
that it
God, a
sticks
lot
in
of
your
things.
memory?
A few things. God, what's my like something that I think of as like the bar? I mean, in terms of video games, I think you want everything to sort of be in like working in tandem. So you want like story, gameplay, world, progression, soundtrack, voice acting, everything to like feed into each other. You don't want these separate systems that like are maybe fine on their own, but don't join to make this like really perfect whole. Um, and I think games that do that, like I mean, one of my favorite games of all time is Red Dead Redemption 2, but I don't think it does what I'm saying is good. Like it's weird.
Okay.
Like it's one of my favorite games of all time, but also
It's a
I don't
prequel too.
know if and it's a prequel too. Yeah, crazy. Which is crazy too because I mean this is a tangent, but
Yeah.
Red Dead Redemption 1 I said this I've always said this. I always felt like always felt like a sequel to a game that didn't exist,
Mm,
and making a prequel was like it just made sense. It was like this game, I feel like they knew this game existed before they made the first one because it links up way too well.
yeah.
It makes too much sense. Like that is the pinnacle of how you do a prequel story. But is it the pinnacle of how you do a video game? I don't know. I think that there's room for criticism there, and I think you look at something like God of War 2018, I think that is a game that utilizes all of its elements in a way that just feeds into one another. I
Yeah.
mean, like I've been pretty immersed in God of War recently. I wrote my retrospective, and then I've played Ragnarok, and I've been writing that video. And I think Ragnarok is nowhere near as good as 2018, and suffers from a lot of problems. But it really highlights to me what 2018 did so well for me, which is that it just every element just feeds into each other in this way that's just so impressive. And I think another game similar is like Persona 5 Royal is a game that just came out of nowhere for me. Like I was not expecting to be so into a game like that just because it's not the type of game I normally play, but it just works so well, like all these elements. So I think like as far as the bar goes, it needs to be at this point where all of your elements, all of your systems, your storytelling, your gameplay, your everything needs to combine to make this overall product. The same way that when you're watching a film, it's not just like, oh, this scene looks pretty and oh, this scene's written well. It's like, no, we've got the cinematography has to tell a story too. And I think with video games, your gameplay and your world design and stuff has to do that as well, especially if it's a story driven game. Um, and I think that that's probably that's like my bar. That's like what I need. And like it gets like the more I do this job, the more I write these videos, the higher my bar gets. And at one day it's gonna be a problem. But it's a really weird experience because over the past like maybe 5 years, I feel like my standards just get higher and higher and higher the more I write scripts, the more I consume different like forms of media and stuff. And I think it's frustrating for a lot of people like watching my stuff. They kind of just want me to just like come on, just like shut off and just enjoy the thing. Um, but I think it is it's a weird experience. But I think that currently that's the bar for things that I think are the best stuff ever. Is like your Persona 5 Raw, your God of War 2018, and even as far as prequels go, Red Dead Redemption 2.
Yeah.
Brilliant game.
Well, I think you like everything that you said is accurate, and but like you said, you've been doing this for quite a while now, and you're seeing a lot of these things from a more experienced lens, right? You're
Yeah.
kind of indulging in different kinds of games, you're finding different things that you like, and um, but luckily, I think that for the most part, the bar is also raising, right? I think
Mm.
what is was considered maybe acceptable storytelling, or people who wanted to tell stories in this universe, right? People like uh Guillermo del Toro or George R. R. Martin, kind of starting to dabble in these kind of things. Just
Yeah.
really well established creative people, despite what you may think of like Elden Ring or Death Stranding. At least they're taking a shot at it, and people are realizing that it is a really good medium to tell impactful stories is
Hmm.
different. Because I think one of my biggest hurdles when every once in a while somebody will bring up like, hey, what do you make on YouTube? Like, it's wildly specific. If you haven't played this game, you probably won't enjoy it.
Yeah, yeah.
But for my money, a lot of the best fiction being put out right now is in video game form, despite its highs and lows. And I don't know, just kind of getting back to that TV adaptation. I don't want it to be Sharknado, man. I just don't want it to be like
No,
sci-fi.
no, no, definitely not. Definitely not.
But as far as what you got coming up in the future there, James, what are you looking for the channel? You're really close to 200,000 subscribers, which is a huge milestone
Yeah,
for you.
yeah. We're
Congratulations on
getting
that. Can't wait to
close.
see that happen.
Thanks, man. I've not even been looking at my subs recently. I feel like that's a sort of, I guess, way I've been looking at what I do over the last like year or so is less about numbers, more about just making the thing I want to make. Because at the heart of like why did I start making content? Well, it's because I enjoy it and I love it and I'm really passionate about the topics that I talk about. And I just love the process of writing up a script and like analyzing things and like why do I feel the way that I do about this? What are the symbolism in these games? I just love the whole like that whole thing. And I have such appreciation for there's like so many people that create video games and TV shows and movies, all the different people that work on stuff down to, the most basic of artists. Um, and so I think that's what I've been focusing on a lot. So less videos is probably my outlook this year is I want to make less videos, but better videos. And I've got, a few little projects here and there, some retrospectives coming up. Red Dead Redemption 2's got its 5 year anniversary, so I'm sure I'll replay that. I wanted to make a big sort of analysis video on Avatar: The Last Airbender TV show because I love that show.
So
I've
good.
always loved that show. It's one of the best. And like not last year, it was probably about 3, 4 years ago. I started writing up a script for it, and I just never finished it. So it's like I want to finish that. I'd like to do that. I mean, I'll probably start from scratch, but that'd be something to do. But my next big project is my God of War Ragnarok critique, which is going to rock the boat, I'm sure. People are not going to be too happy with me, but that's okay. I'm used to it. And then I got things like my retrospective for Assassin's Creed 1, 15 years.
Wow, that's nuts.
And yeah, too long. Um, and other bits here and there, some stuff like that I've got written down, but those are the two main ones I got coming up soon, and it's gonna be, it's fun. I mean, I'm enjoying the process, like writing this God of War video, creating this God of War video. It's been so fun to do. Like, I love the process. People are probably going to be unhappy because it's not a positive video, but I mean, that's just how it is. I mean, have you played Ragnarok?
I did, yeah.
Did you like
Um,
it?
as far as gameplay and everything is concerned, I think they really doubled down on a lot of good positive things. I was a big fan of the spear, the drop in your spear. I thought was a,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
a great weapon. I came to really enjoy it. The one thing that I do feel that they may have, especially if you're planning on ending the series there, I really, in spoilers for, I'm going to put spoilers for God of War in the beginning of this. Like, I was, I felt that Kratos should have died
Interesting. Interesting. Okay.
only because that was, yeah, it led up to this thing, and I get the whole like breaking fate narrative and things like that. But essentially, that he would have made the ultimate sacrifice not because of fate, but because there was some scenario where, it's almost his um ultimate redemption in my mind could have been that, kind of becoming
Mm-hmm.
the person that he always wanted to be, not the god, but the person, because first and foremost, you have so much, attachment to his family that he had before and, children, and just finally being able to succeed as a father that maybe he always would have hoped. But in my mind, that's where I thought it was going. And I was like, oh, great,
Yeah.
he lived. But also, I was like, I wonder, it would have really just like, I
Yeah.
think it might have irritated people, but I thought it might have
Oh,
been.
definitely. Definitely would have irritated people. I can imagine Twitter. if that happened.
Yeah.
I mean, I also did feel that way, and I still kind of do. I think I flip flop back and forth because
Yeah.
the one thing I do think about God of War Ragnarok is it might not be what I would have done for the ending, but I also think it's kind of a perfect ending as well, which
Hmm.
is like a weird thing to say that I wouldn't have done it and I would have changed it, but also I think it's perfect.
Yeah,
I
I
don't really
agree.
understand why I feel that way, but it's this. I think the idea that Kratos is no longer a God of War by the end of God of War is quite meaningful, especially for this
Yeah.
journey that he's been on. And I enjoy that aspect of it. And I think Atreus goes in the right direction and stuff like that. It's like, my main thing about this video that I'm making is that I think the first 2 hours of the game and probably the last 2 hours of the game are really good. I just think everything in the middle is pretty bad, to be honest. But I'm harsh. I'm a harsh critic. It's what I do. But it's a weird one, and it's not like I even think the game was made badly. It's weird to explain. I mean, it's why the videos ended up being so long.
Sure.
Um, I'll trim it down. Hopefully, I mean it's 5 hours currently, but
Ooh,
I'll I'll trim it. I'll trim it the fuck down. I need to get at least 2 hours off that thing. I think,
dang.
and figure it out. But yeah, it's interesting, and I think that God of War Ragnarok. I mean, I think God of War 2018. I think for me, like I said, that's one of my like the bar for video
It was
games.
amazing.
And because Ragnarok just didn't get there, it just felt like a general sort of like, yeah, pretty good game. Like there's a lot of great moments in there, but like overall, like nothing blew me away. Where I was like,
Hmm.
wow, this is incredible. It's just like, yeah, it's
Hmm.
I don't know. I don't know whether like I don't know. I mean, I got a lot of people because I made a commentary on it when I first finished it, and I got a lot of people that sort of agreed that were like, yeah, I felt similar to you, maybe not strongly, but people felt similar, and that felt kind of good. So that to at least know that people felt similar about aspects of it, like whether it be the pacing or some of the dialogue or the tone,
Hmm.
um, which I think was it just felt like an odd game. It felt like almost like they wanted to make something else, but they were stuck making this game, which
Mm.
had to follow up on 2018, had to conclude this new saga. And it was like they didn't, I just felt like they were trapped. Like they didn't have the freedom to really do the thing they wanted to do. Because it also felt almost like they wanted to maybe play around with Atreus a bit more, maybe a bit less Kratos, but they
Right.
almost felt forced to do more Kratos, and like it's like it's a bit confusing, and maybe like part of the backlash to something like The Last of Us Part Two influenced the development of Ragnarok in some way, like trying to play it a bit more safe. But who really knows? I mean, but yeah, I'm interested to put this video out.
Yeah.
I think it'll be fun. Regardless of what happens, I just won't read the comments. And I'll just be happier for it, I think.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, it's obviously uh, the reason I'm sure why it's, as long as it is because you've thought a lot about it and context is important too.
Mm-hmm.
It's just trying to make sure that yeah, this is why I feel this way. And yeah, God of War 2018 was absolutely incredible. That was like such a awesome jumping in point for me because I'd actually never played the other God of War games, like the original ones. And
Mm-hmm.
I know I'm not alone in that. So getting people
Yeah, yeah.
to kind of partake in that universe, I kind of want to go back and play through at least the first three because I think they've been remastered. But um, it was always a daunting, like, yeah, it's an incredibly daunting task. And I do applaud them though for feeling like this is the end. It's two games. Like we're
Mm-hmm.
not going to get shoehorned because if you felt that way about this game, like imagine if they had spun this off into a trilogy.
Yeah, I mean that's a good point. That's a really good point because I in my video I talk about. Oh, it's difficult. In my video I talk about the way that this game feels like. I mean, at least the way it was conceived in 2018 feels like it was supposed to be three games, like it was supposed to be a trilogy. And
Mm-hmm.
then they decided we don't want to lock ourselves into that, so we'll finish it in one. And while that's a good thing because it would have harmed the third game, it also does harm the second game anyway. And so it's like what do you do there? It's a
Yeah.
bit difficult, especially because Corey as well was like moved around and was like he wasn't the actual director of Ragnarok. He was like
Yeah.
just sort of overseeing it. Like they'd come to him sometimes with things, and like yeah, there were parts like there were certain beats that he was like, no, these have to happen, but other than that, go wild.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of like that locks you in then because it's like, well, we've got to get from this beat to this beat, so we can't actually go wild because it's like we can't do the thing we want to do. Um, But that is a good point. Like, I guess it is better for them probably to just be like, well, we're going to finish it in this game because we don't want to do two more.
Yeah.
But I guess in an ideal world, you would just do three, as
Hmm.
it sort of felt like it was planned out to be from the beginning. Um,
Yeah, it's because talk about something that like is so important in storytelling. I think people like don't put as much emphasis on pacing,
mhm.
because like a great like movie, for instance, can be made or die in the editing.
Yeah,
Is something, is it getting to the point of where it's self-indulgent, or is it feeling rushed? Like hitting that right, because just from what you were saying, like it felt as if they at one point during the game that they didn't want to be there. Essentially,
yeah,
it's like,
yeah,
or I think that's one of the big gripes about people's last season of Game of Thrones, because they kind of felt like, we don't want to be here, let's just wrap this up and we want to move on
yeah,
to different
yeah.
things.
Similar,
So
similar. Yeah,
yeah, so it's funny, like, do you, in that moment, if you are feeling that way, you can't help what you're feeling, do you double down and just get it done as quickly as possible and have it suffer because it feels rushed, or do you push it out, for one or two more installments, perhaps rather uninspired? But yeah, it's
yeah,
an interesting dilemma that I wouldn't want to be facing as any kind of creator.
yeah. That's really true. Because it, well, what do you do? I guess the ideal would be
Just
because
feel good
yeah,
about it.
like yeah, the ideal would actually just want to do it for God's sake because I'm mad about this. I think it makes sense to. I guess what would be probably the best thing to do is to maybe give it to someone else. Like, be
Mm,
like, is there someone out there that is very passionate that wants to continue this story and would love to do it? Let them do it, sort of thing. In terms of like, I guess less of like, your general sort of programmers and stuff because they're just sort of doing it anyway. But
mm,
I guess like your creatives, like your writers and your directors and your scenario directors and things like that. You want, like, are there those people that you can get? And I think as well, God of War Ragnarok has an issue with there's just too many writers. They've got like nine
mm.
writers or something, which is like, this is just too many for a game like God of War. Like,
Right.
2018 had three writers, and it's like that worked so well. And then when you pile on all these other ones, like, you can tell one line was written by someone, another line was written by someone else. Like, it just feels different. um and the tone feels like wildly different at some points. Like, sometimes it would just be really like silly and like everyone's being a bit funny for some reason, and then like another scene will be really serious, and it's like, this doesn't feel as cohesive as 2018, because 2018 had different tones, but it just felt more natural. Something about it just worked. And something about Ragnarok just sort of didn't.
Mm.
For me anyway. I mean, it worked for a lot of people, obviously, of course it did. But yeah, I mean, it's something that I've been just completely immersed in for like months now, writing the script and editing this video, and
Yeah, how
so
does that
it's
process work for you? Because yeah, I mean, you're talking about making a, you're at 5 hours now and you're
yeah,
trimming it down. So,
yeah, yeah.
uh, how much gameplay, game capture, just stewing on it? Like,
Yeah, it's a lot of things. It's a daunting process, man. It's every time, like, it's exciting and it's terrifying at the same time, like staring at that blank page when you don't have anything yet except for like maybe some notes I have in my phone, and I've got the gameplay I've captioned, just the thoughts in my head, and I'm like, I have to make a thing now from pretty much scratch. It's a weird experience, and then when you come to the end of it, you're like, I don't even know how I did it. I don't know how I made that thing. It's such a weird, like, yeah, it's really strange, but it's great fun, and I like the process a lot. It's like, that's because a lot of people say to me like, why are you spending all this time working on a video for a game you don't like very much? It's like, because I like making it. That's the bit that I like. So like, that's the enjoyable bit. That's the bit I enjoy. So I am getting value out of it. So like, even if maybe I didn't think Ragnarok was the greatest game ever, making the video on it is fun, and I
mhm.
that's valuable to me. So it's worth doing, even if it's on a negative thing. I mean, I can't make every video negative. That would be really depressing. But, you know,
You wouldn't enjoy
like,
the content then.
no, then it would be too much. But it's nice to alternate. You go from a thing you don't like to a thing you really like, and you can kind of like, just go in and out of that. But it's one of those things. I've just fallen into this, like, because I didn't always make these kinds of videos,
Mhm.
but I just sort of fell into it. I just kind of like started doing longer videos and it just kind of felt right and I got better at it. And yeah, I'm just in a position where it's just kind of my thing now. Who knows where I'll be in like 5, 10 years? Hopefully dead, maybe. But I I'm joking. Um, but we'll see. We'll see where I end up. But so far, currently, the process is a lot of fun, and that's probably why I do it.
Yeah, and this is totally meant as a compliment because I think this is where I would trip up on making content like what you're making is what
Hmm.
you're doing is very coherent.
Hmm.
It's
Right.
well structured and it makes sense and just having that much I think for me that would be the biggest challenge is just organizing all of my thoughts into a way that makes sense, is clear and is getting the point that I want to come across because so much of what I do is informed by what the writers did. So I can really just chronologically or find the answers to what I'm looking for and just kind of put them in a way that I feel is organized. But they're not my thoughts and they're not my feelings about
Hmm.
things a lot of the time. So that's the thing that I'm probably most impressed with is I'm never lost. I'm never like he's been talking about this forever and I don't know where he's going with this. Like I get where
Well,
you're going with your
yeah.
thought process.
I appreciate that because sometimes in the process I can feel like I don't know what I'm doing right
I
now.
can
Like
imagine.
it happens every time with every video. I'll be staring at my script and I'm like, I don't know what the fuck I'm writing. Like I'm just waffling on. This is just I don't know what I've just done. Like it is crazy to do. Like when you finally get to the end and you have a script you're happy with, it's
Mhm.
like wow, I did it. I managed to somehow take all these thoughts and everything that I had and make it into like a script that hopefully for everybody is engaging.
Mhm.
But you never really know. And like sometimes, like with my Horizon Forbidden West video, I wrote out a whole script, I recorded the whole script, and went to edit it, and I was like, this is bad, and I just deleted it all, and I just started
Wow.
again, and it was awful. It was bad, but I ended up with a script that I was so much more happy with, and I'm glad that video turned out really well, and I was really happy with it.
Well, you
Um,
have high standards across the board, right? You got high standards for what you're
yeah,
viewing. You
that's
also have high
it.
standards for yourself, right?
At least I apply it to myself too, you know. At least I'm not just like you make a good thing. I will I won't though. You know, it's my thing's got to be good too. If I'm going to be critiquing other people's stuff, I got to put that effort in as well, but I mean, you said like you're just sort of putting together things that other people have written, but I mean that's a skill too. Like not everybody can do that. That's like a very similar thing to what I do in that like you've got to collate this information, then you've got to try and be like, how can I present this in a way that's like informative and engaging and makes sense. Because a lot of like you do a lot of stuff about these like different notes that you can find all over the place and it sort of tells one singular story.
Right.
Like you've got to find a way like, how can I make this coherent, how can I make this cohesive so that people like actually understand it. And like there's plenty of lore videos out there that I've watched where I'm like, this is someone's just babbling at me. But when I watch your stuff, I'm like, no, this is a narrative. You're like telling me a narrative. And yeah, that's testament to some of the work that's been done by the writers on the game, of course. But definitely, it's testament to something you've done as well there for sure. It's yeah, really good stuff.
Well, thank you. I really appreciate that. Yeah, I'm very lucky to be covering a game that cares about the
Mm-hmm.
characters and the writing and the story and gives a lot of background that enriches that stuff because I know there's so many I think of the person who I watched a lot before I kind of started my journey with My Name is Bife and the Destiny franchise was just I have no idea how he did it because it's like
Mm-hmm.
it seems so disjointed between the people who wanted to make great gameplay and great story and they were totally separate. So at least with Gorilla, they're like their greatest asset is telling really good stories. So, I appreciate that and hopefully they keep knocking it out of the park and I'm really excited for what happens next. The last thing I want to ask you before I let you go and I appreciate you taking this much time
Mm-hmm.
as it is.
Oh, no
Um
worries, man.
uh because I get asked this question sometimes and I just don't feel I'm at this point as a creator to answer this question. But as far as because you really talked about, well, you touched on it a little bit, making content that you're really passionate about, how that kind of affects what you're doing. Because I know some creators are kind of beholden to what they think works or what they kind of
Mm-hmm.
have to do. Um, so just from where you started and now, obviously the kind of content that you've made changes and as a creator, how do you kind of navigate those things between kind of telling yourself, is it okay? Do I have permission to do this? Or, as far as your content creation journey, what do you feel is the most important for people coming up to know?
Yeah, that's a good one. I think it's you definitely learn different things the more you do it. It's this like, how I would have answered this, 2 years ago would probably be completely different. Because you're always learning and you're always figuring stuff out, and that's what it is. It's like a process. I was recording a podcast earlier today, first episode of my new show with that I do with my brother.
Oh, nice.
And we talked about the script writing process and the way that it is this like learning process of like every time you finish a project, the next one is always going to be better because you've learned so much by making that one. And every video feels like that. And the bigger the video, the longer the video, the more you get that experience. And, back in the day, it was like, why did I start my channel? It was totally different content. Like I was making like Minecraft Let's Plays and, all that shit, the stuff you do when you're, I don't know, how old was I, 14. And over the course of the last, how long's it been, 12 years, I've just picked up lots of different things, and you get into different mindsets. And there was a period of time where I was making stuff that I was like, no, this is what the people want, this will get me the most views, this will make me the most money, this will make me the most liked person, or even sometimes this will make me the most disliked person. Like I enjoyed that. I'm like, I like the controversy, I want people to be mad at me. And then you change what you do, and I just fell into what I do now, and I've kind of been honing that skill over the past, like, I guess it's been like 3 years, 4 years maybe, that I've been doing what I do now. And it's really got to let it just come to you. It's just like you do the thing that you want to do, and what reason you do it for, like, can vary. Like you look at, I don't know, a channel like, you look at Raptor, someone that makes a lot of stuff in the Horizon space. I know you had him
Yeah.
on the show
Mm-hmm.
last year or whatever. Someone that, me and him make vastly different content. We're very different in the way we approach content, but the same thing remains, is that he wants to make it. Like he wouldn't be doing this if he didn't want to do it,
Right.
right? And I think like a lot of people, they want the byproduct of it. They want the, I don't know, the followers, the money, the views, like that lifestyle or whatever they think that lifestyle is. I don't know, but the people that are good at it, and the people that have those things, are the people that just want to be doing it. So whereas I want to do it not because I care about any of that stuff, and not because I'm doing it like, I mean, I'm not running it like a business anymore, really. It's just like something that I love to do, and like I'm fortunate enough that like it is my job and I can do it full time, and I really appreciate people that support me. But I'm not doing it for that. And I'd still be doing it anyway. And you've obviously got people like Raptor, that he is running a business. He is doing an incredible job with that.
Yeah.
And he's killing it. And ultimately, why is he so good at it? It's because he wants to do it, right? And that's what it comes down to, I think, for a lot of content creation. If your heart's not in it for one reason or another, then you shouldn't be doing it. Same with anything. It's gotta be something you want to do, whether that's for a passion for the art form, for the content that you're creating, for just a message you want to say, or whether it's because like you enjoy the process of growing a business and employing people and like having that ecosystem that is yours. One way or the other, it comes down to like, do you want to be doing it? And I think that that's the most important part, really, at the end of the day.
Well, James, that was really well said. I appreciate you coming on. It was
Thanks
an
for having me,
awesome
man.
having a chat with you. Tell us where we can find you, your new podcast that's coming out. That sounds like a great time as far as the creative process. So time's yours.
Yeah. Well, you can find me at youtube.com/LazerzZ, if that's how the URLs still work. I make my long form video essay type content. I also stream over on Twitch, twitch.tv/itslazboy. And my new podcast is coming out on the channel Horsey and Fox. I don't think that has a custom URL. I think it's not that at all, but it's you can search it up, Horsey and Fox. Me and George start up our new show. That's going to be a lot of fun. And I do plenty of other stuff, but I'm not going to list all that off. You can find it on my About page. You can find it on my Twitter. But yeah, thank you so much for having me on, man. It's been a great chat. It was nice to catch up with you.
Absolutely.
And have a talk. Thank you so much.
Yeah, for sure. And yeah, we'll be checking out everything, and best of luck, and we'll talk soon.
Thanks, man.